Parents of twins, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
WABC New York and 107.1 WLIR Hampton Bays.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam.
On 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5 o'clock. Good morning. It is Thursday, March 27th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine today, high 50. Tonight and overnight, clear, low 43. And then tomorrow, mostly cloudy, but the high's going to be 63. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it is 32 and clear in Pleasantville up in Westchester County. 34 and clear in Clark over in New Jersey. And it's 35 and clear right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
Play ball. It's opening day for the Mets and Yankees. The White House tries to wiggle its way out of a texting scandal. A New Jersey police chief is accused of doing some weird stuff at the station house. Jewish students in one Long Island school district say they're being harassed. And a home invasion in Queens has everybody talking. All right, 5:01.
Hey, take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd.
Yep, today is opening day of baseball season. Finally here. You can sniff spring in the air, though it's going to be cold up at Yankee Stadium today. The high only 50. But it'll be packed. Mayor Adams, he was up at Yankee Stadium yesterday where the Yankees kick off the season against the Brewers a little bit later.
And so each time someone spends money in a restaurant, a stadium, in a retail store, by buying apparel, or at a hotel, it infuses money into our economy.
Yes, so the thought is actually between the Mets and the Yankees during the course of the next 5 months, they'll generate about $1 billion for the city.
Mets home games are expected to generate $315 million over the next 6 months. Yankees home games expected to bring in substantially more. $594 million for the city, or a combined total of $909 million. The mayor's office says baseball in New York is a home run for our local economy, with fans spending at the stadium, of course, but also in local restaurants and bars and retail stores and in hotels. The mayor's office saying the Mets and the Yankees have played a big part in the city's post-COVID economic recovery. Play ball. Jeff McKinney, 77 WABC News.
Yeah, we're just hours away. Out in Queens, a 16-year-old dead after he was shot in the chest following some sort of dispute yesterday afternoon. Cops got a call about a person shot in Jamaica. This was about 3 in the afternoon. They found the teen unconscious, unresponsive with a gunshot wound outside of Bodega. So apparently he was shot after he got off a bus. Then he walked for a block, clutched his chest, told the people at the bodega that something was going on. Here are the people inside that bodega.
He sleeping, so I do try. You stand up. And what happened? I say, what happened?
Yeah, they said it was strange because there was no blood coming out of his chest, even though he was holding his chest. Unfortunately, he collapsed right there, died a short time later. Police sources saying that he got off this MTA bus at the location in Jamaica, got into a fight with somebody who shot him in the chest. Police don't have a whole lot more than that, but they have made no arrests. The NYPD asking for the public's help in finding a group of people in a violent home invasion in Queens. A shocking video shows several masked men ambushing a 53-year-old woman outside of a home. This was Mayfair Road in Kew Gardens about 7 in the evening. Now, this happened last week. It's not clear why they're releasing the information now. Maybe it's because they've got video of the people they're looking for. But here's the woman saying it was all very horrifying.
First, they locked me in a closet. And then I heard my daughter screaming because they had her in another room. So I banged on the closet. They let me out. And thankfully, they let me be with her the entire time in her room.
The 5 men were inside the house for an hour. They tied up the mother. They tied up a nanny. The little girl was screaming for her mother, and finally they let the mom and the daughter be in the same room.
I don't have peace of mind to even come out my house to get a food delivery from my door.
So neighbors, of course, rattled by the home invasion.
I have 2 kids. I mean, that's like my worst nightmare.
I've always felt safe in here, around here. So that's kind of shocking to hear.
So the 5 left the house, actually. After that hour of just ransacking the place, they found jewelry, purses, luggage, about $1 million worth of stuff. There was no cash. They kept asking for cash. All they got was $7, but they got a lot of other valuables. They left the house, and then they came back. But thankfully, the woman had locked the door. Then they raced off in a Toyota RAV4 and have not been seen since. The good news here, if there is some good news, is that nobody was hurt. They did not hurt any of the nanny, the daughter, or the 6-year-old, or that mother. A veteran worker for Metro North is not only out of a job today, he's under arrest, accused of stealing 6 figures in cash from the MTA.
Tom Shabani had worked for the commuter line for almost a quarter century as a cashier. He'd handle the money customers put in ticket vending machines. The MTA says he pocketed more than a little of it as well, more than $206,000 over the years. Shabani's been arrested, charged with grand larceny, and fired without pay. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
5:06. What do you make of this texting scandal? Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who says he was accidentally put into a text chat with members of the White House as they planned out an attack against Houthi rebels. He doubled down that he was in the text chat, even though he was accused of all kinds of things.
Since the administration was saying nothing to see here, at a certain point you have to let the citizens of America just look and understand what's going on.
That's Jeffrey Goldberg, who unleashed all the texts that he saw, and it seemed like he had a lot of information about the targets, who was going to be fired at, who they were going after.
If the timing of a combat mission, an imminently launched combat mission, is not sensitive government information, I simply don't know what is.
Now, he says he has no idea why he was added to this group, and in fact, when he was added to this group, he thought it was fake. So he just followed along. But then when they gave out all the details of this attack against the Houthi rebels, and then it took place, he said, oh, wait, no, this is real. And I'm actually on a text chain with all kinds of important people like the vice president.
It would, at minimum, give them time to escape. At maximum, it would give them time to prepare for the American attack. And remember, the attack was conducted, according to Pete Hegseth in these chats, by piloted American aircraft. What we're reacting to here, in part, is Trump administration officials saying that there's nothing sensitive in this chat. It doesn't amount to a war plan or an attack plan or secret information or sensitive information.
WABC News Time 509 talking about this texting. Well, can we call it a scandal? We'll call it that. Sure. This journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, saying he somehow ended up part of this signal chat chain that included all kinds of details of this attack on Houthi rebels. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth pushing back, saying that this story is all being sensationalized.
Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning, out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
Now, while Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, was on the defense, Secretary of State Marco Rubio just said this should have never happened.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist. Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that.
And it was bad timing for U.S. intelligence officials. They had a hearing planned in Capitol Hill, and so, of course, they got a lot of heat, mostly, obviously, from Democrats.
There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared. This was a standard update to the National Security Cabinet that was provided alongside updates that were given to foreign partners in the region.
That's the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who was asked all kinds of questions.
National Security Advisor has taken full responsibility for this, and the National Security Council is conducting an in-depth review along with technical experts working to determine how this reporter was inadvertently added to this chat.
Democrats, of course, having a field day, pushing back against all this. Here's Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes.
The president's chief Russian negotiator, Steve Witkoff, is repeating Russian talking points and participating on a madcap signal chat about an attack on Yemen while inside Russia.
Yeah, so Himes is saying that it's fortunate that this information was not shared with our enemies.
Everyone here knows that the Russians or the Chinese could have gotten all of that information, and they could have passed it on to the Houthis, who easily could have repositioned weapons and altered their plans to knock down planes or sink ships.
Now, just to keep this story going, the White House said the group chat about the military strikes on Yemen contained known classified information. Here was Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt yesterday.
The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this matter. And the National Security Council immediately said, alongside the White House counsel's office, that they are looking into how a reporter's number was inadvertently added to this messaging thread.
Yeah, so they say they brought in Elon Musk to help figure out how this all took place. Everybody weighing in. Of course, Democrats saying this was a huge mistake. Senator Rick Scott, he's a Republican from Florida. He says the other side of the aisle playing politics with this incident, which, well, of course they are.
I want to hear about how we're going to get peace in Ukraine and around the world. When he left office in 2021, we were at peace around the world. So I want to hear how he's going to bring that back, and then how we're going to get inflation under control. I think he's got a lot to brag about, first off. He said he was going to secure the border, and he's done it. So I think that's a big deal. I think he's trying to put together a really good cabinet team, and he has, and we've got most of them confirmed now.
Scott coming to the defense there of President Trump. 5:13, the Supreme Court upholding the Biden administration's regulations on so-called ghost gun kits. Correspondent Laura Jarrett says this is an unusual case involving guns.
We should know it's a case about guns, but it's not a case about squarely the Second Amendment in the way that we typically think about it. It's really a case about the technical definition of a firearm, whether the ATF had the ability to regulate these kits.
The kits easily allow people to get the needed parts to build firearms from sellers online. The decision was 7-2. Justice Gorsuch was writing the majority's opinion. Former President Biden put the regulation into effect. This was the summer of 2022. It requires manufacturers, sellers to get licenses, put serial numbers on products, and conduct background checks and keep up with those records. 5:13. A federal appeals court is upholding the order blocking the Trump administration from deporting migrants under the Rarely Used Alien Enemies Act.
In a 2-1 decision Wednesday, the panel of judges opted not to lift the court order from U.S. District Judge James Boasberg. The judge had issued the order after the administration began deporting immigrants it claimed were connected to a Venezuelan gang. The Justice Department urged the appeals court to block the order, calling it an infringement on the authority of the president in matters of national security. Boasberg is expected to soon rule on whether a longer injunction should be granted. I'm Brian Shook.
We go from Washington down to Texas. The gunman behind a mass shooting inside a Texas Walmart being offered a plea deal that takes the death penalty off the table. Governor Greg Abbott says that's a huge mistake.
I think the guy does deserve the death penalty, to be honest.
He says the racially motivated attack is what capital punishment is for. Patrick Cruces opened fire on shoppers inside an El Paso Walmart, killing 23. Remember this? Saying he wanted to stop the Hispanic invasion. And Greg Abbott says this guy is a guy who really deserves to be executed.
A heinous shooting like that is what capital punishment is for.
Now, the reason it was taken off the table is the families of the victims were told it'd be quicker. This case would go quicker if they just put him behind bars forever. So he's going to serve a 90 consecutive life terms for that federal hate crime that took place down in Texas. 5:15, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Happy Friday Eve and good morning, Justin Ellick.
Happy Friday Eve. Good morning to you, Noam Layden. We will start here with the NBA at the Garden. The Knicks lost to the visiting LA Clippers by a score of 126-113, preventing New York from clinching a playoff berth. Karl Anthony Towns had 34 points and 13 rebounds for the Knicks, who were looking to follow Cleveland and Boston and become the third team to wrap up a spot in the East. Up next for the Knicks, they'll visit the Bucks in Milwaukee tomorrow night. In Brooklyn, the Nets were losers as well, falling 116-86 to the visiting Toronto Raptors. Nick Claxton led Brooklyn with 22 and 11. Zaire Williams added 13 points. Brooklyn is 1-8 in their last 9 and 2-15 in their last 17. They'll be back out there tomorrow night at home when they welcome in the aforementioned LA Clippers. And we do pick up action today in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Sweet 16 starts tonight, 7:09 p.m. tip-off. 6-seed BYU against 2-seed Alabama. Alabama 5.5-point favorites there in the East region. In the West region, you get 4-seed Maryland against 1-seed Florida at 7:39 p.m. Florida there, 6.5-point favorites. In the West region, in the East region, I should say, you get 4-seed Arizona against 1-seed Duke at 9:39 tonight. Duke 9.5-point favorites there, and 10:09 p.m. tip-off tonight. 10-seed Arkansas against 3-seed Texas Tech in the West region. Texas Tech there, 5.5-point favorites. In the NHL, the Islanders fell 5-2 at home to the Vancouver Canucks. They'll remain on the outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture after losing 3 of 4 on a 4-game homestand. Up next for the Isles, they play at Tampa Bay come Saturday. In Chicago, Luke Hughes had 3 assists. Jesper Bratt chipped in with 2, and the Devils ended their 3-game losing streak with a 5-3 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. They'll visit the Jets up next come tomorrow night in Winnipeg. And, of course, today is really the, de facto start of spring, I guess, if you will, Noam Laden. Opening day across Major League Baseball. You get a bunch of games today, and then a bunch of teams are off tomorrow, while a bunch of other teams play tomorrow. They're doing that flip-flop thing. But today you do get both of your local teams here, the Mets and the Yankees, at 3 p.m. Yanks will get their 2025 campaign underway with Carlos Rodon on the bump for a 3 p.m. first pitch. He'll go up against the Milwaukee Brewers right-hander Freddie Peralta. And 4:10 p.m. this afternoon, the Mets will get underway with their very shiny new toy in Juan Soto out in Houston against the Astros at 4:10. Clay Holmes, the former closer for the Yankees, he'll get the opening day start for the Mets against Houston's Framber Valdez. That's your sports. No, I'm Justin Elk on 77 WABC.
Hey, business owners, make your cash secure again with Secure Cash LLC. Transporting your business's cash safely in armored trucks. SecureCashLLC.com.
WABC News Time 5:20. Of course, it's spring, but then comes summer, and before you know it, the big vacations begin. And the feds are warning that this will be the first travel season that flyers will need those new type of driver's license called the Real ID. They've done a terrible job, by the way, of publicizing this. I think most people don't have these. In order to get through security, you'll need one of these Real IDs.
May 7th and beyond, you are required to present a Real ID when you get to the TSA checkpoint.
TSA spokeswoman Patty Mancha there says if you don't have one of these new driver's licenses, you'll be pulled out of line. TSA agents will grill you about your identity, and that's not a quick process. So how do you know, of course, if you have one? Well, each state does it different, but there will be either a star or a flag or a word enhanced on its face. Now, if you hadn't gotten a license in a number of years, you don't have one of these. So it's time to go collect one.
When someone renews a license or gets a license for the first time, certain documents are required, like a birth certificate.
Yeah, so I don't have one, actually. I got to go get one.
This is really about identity verification.
Yeah, so you can bring other documents. It looks like a passport will work until you get that driver's license. Vice President J.D. Vance is telling his fellow Marines that the White House will empower them to win.
We're going to invest in the Marine Corps and the entire United States military like we never have before.
Yeah, kind of a nice moment at the Marine Corps base at Quantico in Virginia yesterday. Vance, who of course is a Marine himself, wanted to let people know that the White House loves the Marines.
250 years of winning wars, 250 years of kicking ass and taking names. Every single branch of the United States military for the past 2 months has been meeting its recruitment goals.
Yeah, Vance's 4 years in the Marines that included a tour actually in Iraq. 522, President Trump marking Women's History Month yesterday. Comments delivered from the East Room. He says women have expanded the American dream throughout the country's history.
Throughout our history, strong, tough, visionary women have defended our flag, strengthened our communities, explored new frontiers, and expanded the American dream for all of our children and all of our people.
Talked about the golden age of women in America.
Really, I think you're going to be the dominant leaders, and you have a lot of them in this room politically, but just the fact that you're here and the fact that you're with us is so important. There's nothing like strong, beautiful, wonderful women. You have the heart, you have the whole spirit.
523 executives at NPR, PBS, facing allegations of political bias in Congress. During a House Doge hearing over public funding for the outlets, Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said that she would make her position clear in front of this group, and she did.
For far too long, federal taxpayers have been forced to fund biased news. This needs to come to an end, and it needs to come to an end now.
NPR's head, Catherine Maher, PBS's president, Paula Kerger, defended their outlets, claiming they both subscribe to the highest journalistic standards and are not biased. Both cited the continued need for the millions of taxpayer dollars, noting that they are the only source of news in some smaller communities. And for the Democrats who are defending the funding, they say things like Sesame Street and those kids shows, those are big too for PBS.
I'm sad to see that this once proud committee, the principal investigative committee in the House of Representatives, has now stooped to the lowest levels of partisanship and political theater to hold a hearing to go after the likes of Elmo and Cookie Monster.
Yeah, they're going after Elmo and Cookie Monster. Marjorie Taylor Greene says that's nonsense. She's just going after political bias.
NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers for a narrow audience of mostly wealthy, white, urban liberals and progressives.
There was a moment where Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, he asked the NPR's head, Catherine Maher, why her journalists ignored the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake.
Maher did call a report concerning that there are 87 employees at her D.C. bureau that are registered Democrats and 0 Republicans. So that'll tell you something right there. 525, President Trump says he could extend the deadline for the upcoming TikTok ban if he wants to. Trump also said he might give China a reduction in tariffs if the government approves a TikTok deal brokered by America.
Well, there are numerous ways you can buy TikTok, and we will find the one that's best for the country, for our country. I'm worried about our country more than anything else.
TikTok's fate's been up in the air for months now due to a bill that forces its Chinese-owned parent company ByteDance to sell the app to a non-Chinese buyer or be banned in the U.S. for good.
Maybe I'll give them a little reduction in tariffs or something to get it done, because every point in tariff is worth more money than TikTok.
Now, you may not be one of the people that's on TikTok, but about 170 million Americans at some point during the day sign on to TikTok. Vice President Vance has been working to find a buyer for the app, but so far there have been no takers. 526, let's go down to the Carolinas. Fires continue to burn in parts of western North Carolina. These residents say they're concerned as they watch the flames get closer to their homes.
I don't want to lose my home, and then my animals.
I'm hoping that it doesn't jump and we get it over there and burns up our property.
The fires, collectively known as the Black Cove Complex Fire, have burned more than 6,000 acres. That's in Polk County. And now parts of neighboring Henderson County being told to evacuate. And in South Carolina, some upstate residents also getting evacuation orders as the Table Rock Complex Fire has burned through about 1,300 acres over the last week.
Rocks, whatever we can in there, we'll anchor to those and dig in line or push line off of that. If there are any roads that are usable, we'll use those as well.
Firefighters working hard to contain all this.
We're real positive about the process or about the progress that's being made. Got a bunch of highly motivated folks that are out there on the line, and they're wanting to button this up as quick as we can.
Yeah, those firefighters working hard. Neighbors say they just want the updates to know whether they need to leave their house.
Hopefully, if everything goes well over the next 24 hours or so with the wind, that maybe we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, let's hope for the best there.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour. Sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noah Layden. All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now, Talking the news with Noam on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 536. Good morning. It is Thursday, March 27th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine today, the high going to be 50. Cold for the Yankees game this afternoon. Tonight and overnight, clear, low 43. And then Friday, mostly cloudy, but warmer, high 63. If you are walking out the door with us right now, so happy you are. 32 clear in Pleasantville, up in Westchester County. 34 and clear in Clark over in New Jersey. And it's 35 and clear right outside our Midtown studio. WABC News Time 5:39. The stepmom who allegedly kept her stepson hostage in his bedroom from the time he was in fourth grade until he was 31 made a court appearance up in Waterbury, Connecticut yesterday. You should have seen the pack of reporters. I mean, not just American, but from around the world. People fascinated with this story, how the stepmom allegedly held her son in this room until he set the room on fire back in February, knowing that firefighters would show up and maybe rescue him, which they did. When they pulled him out of his room, he was only 5'9" and 68 pounds. He's alive. That's the good news. He has a long road to recover. So this woman, Kimberly Sullivan, she was in court yesterday, and her lawyer says that the press is not giving her a fair shake and that she deserves her day in court.
Those allegations are serious, but those allegations are made by one person. I understand the whole world has jumped on those allegations and has already convicted my client. But the good thing about America is that's not how we work.
Now, it was a media circus outside the courthouse yesterday. The biological mother of this victim, of this 31-year-old victim, we don't know his name, it has not been released, says that she wishes she had known what he was going through. Now, it's not clear when she gave him up for adoption. It may have been at birth, but she said she had been searching for him, and she says she thinks this stepmother is a step monster.
What did you know about Kimberly Sullivan before this had happened?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. My son said that it started when he was around 3. That would be about the time that those two met.
Kimberly Sullivan free on $300,000 bond. In the meantime, victim's mother and half-sister say they searched online for years for any sign of this person who stopped attending school when he was 11 years old. So here is his biological sister, who he has not met yet.
I was thinking that he was, allowed to be a human and living his life, and you just can't imagine anything like this happening because this doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a crazy and awful story. Not clear exactly when the next court date's going to be. A Queens family says a group of masked men forced their way into their Kew Gardens home, tied them up, and stole about $1 million worth of valuables. A mother and her 6-year-old daughter were inside on this home. This is a Mayfair Road last week, about 7 o'clock. Apparently, the nanny had let herself in, and then these 5 men came running in afterwards. Here's the mom who was talking to the media yesterday.
They came in with her. They pushed her in, and I heard her scream very loudly. Just, where's the cash? Where's the cash? We're not here to tell anybody we need the cash. We need the cash. Where's the cash?
The woman said she ran towards her daughter, her 6-year-old, who had come out of her room, but the intruders initially separated all 3 of them. She said the men bound her and the nanny's hands with duct tape, ransacked the home, put her in a closet. The child was screaming out for her mother, and finally the men decided to put the mother and the daughter together.
I heard my daughter screaming because they had her in another room, so I banged on the closet. They let me out. And thankfully, they let me be with her the entire time in her room.
And the amazing part is these 5 men were in this house for an entire hour. They grabbed all kinds of stuff, high-end purses, jewelry, shoes, suitcases, totaling more than $1 million. They left the home. The mother, the nanny, the child able to undo themselves, and then they were able to lock the door. And good thing they did, because the 5 men came back. Not clear what they were looking for on the way back. Maybe they thought they'd find more stuff. Now police are looking for him, releasing video, doorbell camera stuff. They left in a Toyota RAV4. Neighbors, of course, freaked out. They're like, oh, this is not good, home invaders in our neighborhood.
I really always thought this was a safe neighborhood. I've always felt safe in here, around here. So that's kind of shocking to hear and upsetting.
Now, so far, police have made no arrests. 543, formal charges for 3 U.S. postal workers accused in the rape of a colleague in the back of a postal truck.
Prosecutors gave disturbing details about what they say Kurt Alcala, Edward Chow, and Daniel Jean did in June 2023 at the post office on 4th near 11th in the East Village, with much of it caught on tape. They say it shows the three dragging an incapacitated female coworker out the loading bay as she tried to cling to a railing and into a postal truck. Someone called 911. Police heard banging in the back when Gene walked out with his pants unzipped. The three men pleaded not guilty to kidnapping and more. Gene faces rape charges as well. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
544, a Long Island school district promising to take what they call tremendous steps forward following what the superintendent says has been an uptick in anti-Semitic incidents going on in their schools there. Three Village Central School District Superintendent Kevin Scanlon making the comments last night, addressing a Board of Ed meeting. There are concerns in the community after word spread that students at the Paul J. Galinas Junior High have been making and using all kinds of anti-Semitic language, especially during a Holocaust class.
With no acts of violence or threats. Most of these incidents incurred speech and sensitive acts and remarks. It doesn't matter if it was 1 or it was 41. 1 is enough.
Now, a lot of people showed up to this meeting, including a rabbi last night who sends his school, or rather his kids, to the school system.
Had someone used a racial slur or suggested that some other group be lynched or attacked, none of the students, teachers, no one would have found that funny or just a offhanded, noisy comment.
Yeah, that's Rabbi Aaron Benson, who says the school system did not act quick enough to protect those Jewish students. 545, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Here's Justin Alec.
Thank you, Noah Maladen. Start here on the hardwood at the Garden. The Knicks lost to the visiting LA Clippers by a score of 126-113, preventing New York from clinching a playoff berth. They were looking to follow Cleveland and Boston and become the third team to wrap up a spot in the East. Coming up next for them, they'll visit the Bucks in Milwaukee tomorrow night. In Brooklyn, the Nets were losers as well. They got walloped 116-86 by the visiting Toronto Raptors. They'll be back out there tomorrow night at home when they welcome in the aforementioned Los Angeles Clippers. Are 1-8 in their last 9, 2-15 in their last 17. Season can end soon enough for them. Getting back to the NCAA men's basketball tournament today, after a couple of days in limbo there, we pick up the Sweet 16 tonight, 7:09 p.m. tip-off. 6-seed BYU against 2-seed Alabama. Alabama there, 5.5-point favorites in the East region. In the West region, you get 4-seed Maryland and 1-seed Florida. That's 7:39 tonight. Florida there, 6.5-point favorites. Duke, the 1-seed in the East region, they're 9.5-point favorites against 4-seed Arizona. That's tonight at 9:39 p.m. and 10:09 p.m. You get 3-seed Texas Tech, 5.5-point favorites against 10-seed Arkansas. Obviously beating the St. Johnnies in the last round, Calipari's team there in the West region. They're looking forward to that, and then you get four more games of the Sweet 16 tomorrow, no? To the ice in the NHL we go. The Islanders fell 5-2 at home to the Vancouver Canucks. The Islanders remain on the outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture after losing 3 of 4 on a 4-game homestand. Up next for them, they'll play at Tampa Bay come Saturday. In Chicago, Luke Hughes had 3 assists. Jesper Bratt chipped in with 2. And the Devils ended their 3-game losing streak with a 5-3 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. They'll visit the Jets next come tomorrow night in Winnipeg. And, of course, today, we're all looking forward to it, 3 p.m. for the Yankees, 4:10 p.m. for the Mets. It is opening day, game 1 of 162 for our local powerhouse ball clubs here. The Yanks will welcome in.
Will they be powerhouse ball clubs this season, you think?
Yeah, both of them will be.
Really?
Yeah. The American League is weak enough that the Yankees can still do a lot of damage with what they've got, despite those injuries, obviously, to Garrett Cole and to others. So Luis Gil, of course, being one of those names. So you lose a couple of big starting pitchers in your starting rotation, but you should be able to still do a good amount of damage, at least in that AL East. Really, the only team that should be threatening you in that AL East are the Baltimore Orioles, but consensus is that they are not necessarily over that hump of developing those young guys to the point where they can, surpass the Yankees and all that experience in that clubhouse.
Well, this Brewer team that they're playing today is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee's been good for the past handful of years. It's a good franchise. It's just people forget that Milwaukee has a baseball team sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, the Brewers are great. I like the Brewers. In terms of a National League team, they're a fun team. They got a fun stadium. They slide down the guy from the mascot in the slide, and they're the Brewers, so they brew beer all day. That's fun. What's not to like about the Brewers?
And what about the Mets? Are the Mets going to back their way into the postseason?
Of course, okay. Yeah. I think that for the Mets, you're still not on the same level as the LA Dodgers because they're just a cheat code at this point. But the Mets are right there, just a notch below, and I think it's NLCS or bust for the Mets this season. And to be honest, if I'm a Mets fan this year and you go out and you make the sort of moves that this team did in the offseason, it really is World Series or bust. You got to get over that hump. You got to beat these LA Dodgers. That's the key. That's why you go and get Juan Soto. You know what I'm saying?
We'll find out come September if you're correct.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. Yeah. That's your sports. I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:50. A veteran worker for Metro North is now out of a job. He's under arrest, accused of stealing 6 figures in cash from the MTA. Tom Shabani had worked for the commuter line for almost 25 years as a cashier. He was the one who handled the money customers put into ticket vending machines, and the MTA says he pocketed more than a little of it, as well as $206,000 over the years. Shabani's been arrested, charged now with grand larceny, and fired without pay. A member of the Air Force facing charges, accused of luring a Long Island 9-year-old to send him sexual videos for cash.
David Ibarra is a senior airman stationed at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage. The 31-year-old was arrested last month after using TikTok and the game Roblox to meet a 9-year-old girl from Suffolk County online last August. Prosecutors say he pretended to be 13. He eventually paid her $191 for several sexually explicit videos. After the girl's parents found out and went to police, they say Ibarra texted 2 selfies to someone he thought was the girl's older sister. It was actually her mom. Ibarra later admitted to soliciting photos from 2 other underage girls, including one from New Jersey. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
While we're out on Long Island, a man there facing second-degree murder charges today. Lisa Ritchie has the story.
An East Meadow, Long Island man is charged in the death of his domestic partner. Georgios Bultadakis, a former Oyster Bay Parks employee, was indicted Wednesday for allegedly killing John Melnikoff Jr. in August of 2022. Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney says it was a brutal murder in which Bultadakis choked his partner to death. His body was found at the bottom of the staircase leading to the couple's basement. The 25-year-old faces up to 25 years in prison. His next court date is April 16th. I'm Lisa Ritchie for 77 WABC News.
Simcha Felder has won a city council special election seat in a community in Brooklyn, one that has a large Orthodox Jewish community. Felder, a Democrat, first elected to the city council. Then he went to the state senate, decided he wanted back in the city council. He got 82% of the vote. He won big out of the almost 6,000 that have been counted so far. Here he was.
I try to do what's best for my constituents and New Yorkers.
He was up against Heshi Tischler, who I think has been on with Sid and Friends of the Morning. He got 17% of the vote.
People are saying, some people in different groups and so on, Heshi, you keep running, you keep trying, you keep losing. I do it for the community.
The mayoral race, that continues to heat up as the candidates work to gain name recognition. That's a lot of it for at least 7 or 6 of the candidates on the Democratic side. New Yorkers in Midtown say, I don't know all these 9 people in the race.
It does matter because people want to know who they're voting for.
You need to have visibility, and you need to have positive visibility that is loud.
Yeah, so we had that poll earlier this week from Honan Strategy. Governor Cuomo at 41%, way ahead of the pack. Zohran Mamdani was the second place, but he was all the way back at 18%. And in fourth place, Eric Adams with just 6%, which voters again in Midtown say they're not surprised by.
Right now, we're just looking at names and we're just looking at these people. So once they get into office, it makes a big difference if they stand on their word.
It's not so much whether Democrat
Democrat or Republican, but it's the issues and how they're going to be handled, and hopefully they'll be handled equitably.
Now, over the last couple of elections, the turnout on Election Day was incredibly low, but people say they're paying attention to this race this year. New York City Council voting on legislation that will reduce the time that scaffolding and sidewalk sheds are allowed to stay up. In some neighborhoods, it seems like they've been up forever. The Council Speaker, Adrian Adams, who's, of course, in the race for mayor as well, says there are more than 8,400 scaffolding structures across the city, and they've been up an average of nearly 500 days, which is outrageous.
When sidewalk sheds drape over our city streets, they make it more difficult for us to see what goes on underneath them, which can foster climates that lead to crime.
Yeah, they've tried this oversight for years. They got to do a better job of it. City Council says, of course, these sheds, these negatively impact the sight lines for businesses. They lose business because you can't see them from the road.
We've been fighting to shed the sheds, to get rid of the scaffolding, to make our city safer, strengthen our small businesses, and improve everyone's experience on the streets.
5:55, let's go out to New Jersey. It's been 3 months now since the first of 3 sinkholes developed along Interstate 80 in Morris County for many of the local businesses near the highway. This is mostly in Wharton. The heavy traffic outside means less traffic inside, because what's happened is they'd get the normal morning rush of people getting breakfast, but now that it takes them twice as long to get around those sinkholes, they're not stopping to get breakfast. Same holds true at the end of the day for a drink on the way home. And waiters, waitresses, restaurant owners say they've noticed this big time.
I live for my tips, so it's like a really, really bad situation for me.
Over time, it's just kind of going down, down, down. And of course, we are new, so the money invested, it's a lot.
So the bill that some New Jersey lawmakers introduced this week hopefully will help some of these businesses out. Ora Dunn, State Senator Dubuco, learning that the stores in this area in Wharton, the business down 20 to 30%. So their proposed legislation would create a $1 million grant program through the Economic Development Authority to help these people survive what'll be maybe another 6 or 8 weeks until all of this is repaired.
It's an emergency measure. So we're hoping that it can go through quickly. This is now a multi-government level approach.
And we'll end with what is a wild story out of Hudson County, New Jersey. A police chief there accused of attacking and harassing his staff. 5 police officers coming forward with the North Bergen Police Department say they plan to sue due to the behavior of Chief Robert Farley. Court documents claim that Farley defecated on floors in the station house, exposed himself to officers, and attempted to drug fellow co-workers. That's among what is a list of incidents in a wild story that we'll post over at WABCRadio.com.